What's up, everybody? We're back here in the fireplace. Welcome, where the conversations are fire. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very interesting show for you today. Hit me up in the comments. My in-studio assistant is not here today. She's a part of the show. But hit me up in the comments. Let me know that you're here, that you're watching. What we're going to do today, we're going to make sure we take a pause to fan the flames of the conversation. Take some questions from those of you who are watching. But before we do that, I have to do my shout outs. Yes, shout out to Alicia Way, these dope, as the young people call it, these dope overlays. Shout out to Lou Rogers Jr., Vision Audio Visual. He's our videographer. Shout out to the Green Legend for promoting the fireplace. They do a great job for us. Big shout out to my brother, Keith Pelzer. Because of him, I'm not dreaming, I'm streaming right now. Yes. In case you didn't know, this podcast is being brought to you by Ecamm, visual software made for Mac that carries your message across the world. All right, today's show is entitled Daddy Daughter. Yeah, we have a Daddy Daughter show today. My guest is my daughter, Adrian, who normally is here with me as my studio assistant. But today, she is on the daughter side of the Daddy Daughter show. We actually had our conversation on yesterday. We recorded it. I have some clips from that conversation. It's going to be good. But before we do that, hey, how you doing, Dawn? Good to see you. I see some people chiming in. Thanks for joining us today. Before we get into that, I got a couple of things that I want to say. Yeah, things that I want to drop off on you today. Then I'm going to give you a little background on Adrian and me. Then we'll get into today's show entitled Daddy Daughter. We did that today. I entitled that, or gave it the title, Daddy Daughter. And a part of the reason I decided to do this is because I want those of us who are watching, who are parents, those of you who are watching are parents, particularly fathers or daddies, whatever you want to be called, whatever your age is, to understand the power of parental presence. Yeah, it makes a difference when a father is in the life of the child. It makes a difference in that child's life when their daddy is present in his son or his daughter's life. There's something about a father being present in his or her child's life that makes a difference. And you can do the research on your own. When a father is present in his child's life, that child is less likely to drop out of high school, is less likely to abuse drugs, less likely to abuse alcohol, less likely to have emotional or psychological problems. When a father is present in his child's life, that child is less likely to have behavioral issues. His daughter is less likely to have a baby before she gets married. It makes a difference when a father is present in his child's life. And I'm I'm not talking about having custody of your child. I'm simply talking about being present in your child's life. Even if you don't have custody of them, that doesn't excuse you from being a father to them. And I'm not trying to preach, but I just feel compelled to say that. Now, let me give you a little history about me and my daughter, Adrian. This is pretty interesting. Adrian was born on April 22nd, 1990. She was born in a hospital in Providence, Rhode Island. When she was born, the doctor said that she had a heart murmur, which eventually turned into something a lot bigger than that. So we were able to take her home, and we were home for about a month. They had scheduled for us to take Adrian to a hospital in Boston, Children's Hospital, a month after she was born, just for a checkup. Well, the day we took her to the hospital, they examined her, and they came back and said that she needs to stay in the hospital because she needs to have surgery, heart surgery, immediately. Come to find out that she had something that was called tetralogy flow with absent pulmonary valve. Long, short story in that is that she had a couple of holes in her heart, and her pulmonary artery was not connected to her heart. So over the course of several open heart surgeries, and over the course of years, and even scoliosis surgery, because children who had their chest cavity broken open and who had heart surgery were prone to scoliosis. So Adrian developed scoliosis as well. And when she was about, 11 or 12 years old, she had surgery on her spine to straighten out her spine. And that was a miracle as well. And that's where I'm going with this. She's our miracle baby, is that she was able to have these multiple heart surgeries, have that pulmonary artery connected. I'll never forget the doctor's name, Aldo Castaneda. Yes. He drew a picture of what he was going to do, and he said, don't worry about that. I can do that. Wow. It was awesome. Even back in 1990, he was awesome. God is awesome. And I say all of that, I present all of that to say this about Adrian. Adrian, when she was born, she's my guest today, and she's 31 years old now. But when she was born, it was life-changing for me. It was a change agent. Her birth and the fact that she was struggling to stay alive turned me towards the Lord. And that's when I gave my life over to the Lord. I actually told God, listen, God, if you spare my child, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And God spared my child. And she's a grown woman now that has her own opinion, as you're going to find out in a minute. And she has been a blessing. And I've been living for the Lord ever since. Have I been perfect? No. There are things I've been struggling with and still do struggle with, things that I've gotten better at, things that have really become a part of my past. But like everybody else, like all of us, we all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And we're all a work in progress. We're in the potter's hands. We are his clay, and he's shaping us, making us, and molding us. So I just wanted to say all of that so that I could kind of give you a little bit of a background on Adrian and myself. And yes, she's my child. We have 4 children. I have 4 children, and they're all special to me, but she holds a special place in my heart, just like the rest of them. But she was the change agent for me. So we had a conversation yesterday. I'm going to show you some of these clips today. I want you to understand something. She said some pretty interesting things. Yes. What's up, Richard? Good to see you. Brian, good to see you too. Thanks for joining us today. She said some pretty interesting things today, or yesterday, I should say. Now, I had some issues with the mic. When you see her talk, there is a delay in her talking, and you're going to have to give me a little grace. I'm low tech, just above no tech. I'm working on this stuff. I didn't know how to fix the problem, but I thought that it was necessary to go ahead with it because she said some really good things. So hang in there and listen. If you listen, you'll hear some good stuff today. Watch this, and then we'll come back. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. Or if you want to make a comment, drop them in the comments, and we'll take a look at them when we come back from this. Check this out. Yes, you are. Grown woman. My goodness, I can't get over it. You're a grown woman. But there were times, that our relationship, even when you were younger, wasn't good, or at least in your opinion, it wasn't what it needed to be.
Did you have a different opinion of that?
Well, I never thought that I was a bad father. I never thought that I was too hard on you, the girls, you and Taylor and your sister. I was rough on the boys, but I had a goal in mind, because I believe that what the Bible says about generations passing on bad things to other generations, to generations coming after them. And I know some history from my father and my grandfather, and some of the things that they passed on to me. Mm-hmm. So I knew that I was fighting generations of stuff. So I knew if it was going to be stopped, if it was going to, cease and desist, I had to be a little extra in some areas to get
extra. Is that what we're calling it?
Yeah, I had to be a little extra. I was, because I was fighting. At least I believed, and I still believe that I was fighting, and still are fighting. I still am fighting generations of curses. When you talk about negative things, the negative characteristics we have as people, or the things that are ungodly that we carry around inside of us as people, that ultimately become actions of ours. They're our thoughts, but they eventually become actions if we, keep those thoughts and remain in those thoughts. They become actions. And the older I was getting, I was starting to see some of my father in me. Not that my father was a bad man. I don't think he had a bad heart. I don't believe he had a bad heart. I believe he was limited in his ability to be a father only because of the limitations that his father had with regards to what we know about today, raising a child emotionally, psychologically, hugging and kissing and giving your child more than just a roof over their head and clothes on their back. There's more to parenting than that. So in that regard, I always felt that I was, and it's all trial and error. There's no booklet. There's no pamphlet for parents.
Technically, there's 1,000 books out there to be read. However,
right, yes, but there's no
guideline to parenting. Parenting, I also believe that
right.
There's Bubba and Taylor are all very different individuals.
Right. There's no absolute. There's no one way to do it. Exactly.
I think that my perception is my reality. Number one. So how you perceived your parenting and is it how I took it are two different ways.
Exactly. That's what we want to know.
Do I think that you were hard on my brothers? Absolutely. Do I think that you weren't as hard on me growing up necessarily? More as like a younger kid when it came to stuff like that? Only because I feel like, you guys were in a sense easier on me because of my health issues. So I feel like you guys weren't, as strict with me. However, growing into my teen years, you don't think that you were hard. I strongly disagree with that.
Okay. And what way was I hard? I mean, I might have been, are you using the word strict and hard as the same thing?
Yes, we can call it strict. We can call it hard. We can call it.
Yes.
Some days I called you mean. Some days I just blankly didn't like it.
Okay. Well, I definitely was strict for sure. I definitely was strict.
Unnecessarily though.
Unnecessarily.
I feel like you absolutely were unnecessarily strict.
Okay.
Again, I can only talk for me. But for me, it was like I just wanted to sometimes hang out with my friends, and it was like a hard no.
No.
Not even a like, where are you going? Are you gonna like, who are you gonna hang out with? It was just like a hard no, and it was just like go. And it was just like at that point, it was like, well, I don't want to be around you, so I'm gonna go sit in my room for the rest of the day. And I distinctly remember one time I was in high school. Mm-hmm. I had to be at least a senior at this point.
Well, remember things changed, and I'm going to let you finish. So mm-hmm. Hold that thought. Things change, when you start becoming, particularly the females. We as old school, we have, and this does not justify the boys or the males, but when there was a saying that when the male or the boy had a problem, he didn't necessarily bring it home. But when the females had a problem, they would bring it home.
In what regard?
Well, particularly babies, particularly babies. So that's a father's. Just so you know, that is a father on both sides, but more so with the daughters. That is one of the fathers. That's one of our nightmares. Is our daughters getting pregnant while they're in high school, while they're a teenager, and we have to gird up and we have to support you, and we have another child to take care of, or help at least take care of. So that's really a father who has daughters who are growing up. They start becoming teenagers. You are our angels. We see you and value you as pure. All right. And that's one of our worst nightmares for our daughters to be violated by someone, particularly. Well, that's the way we see it, to be violated by someone who really just wants to violate you. Guys in high school aren't thinking about marrying you. They're only thinking about one thing.
Just so we're clear though, just so everyone's very clear on something.
Okay.
I was not a promiscuous kid.
I'm not saying you were. I'm just saying that's a father's nightmare. So that's why we're so.
You and my mother raised me well enough
Mm-hmm.
to not be a promiscuous child,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in high school. I was a very much so the kid that went to school, came home.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have a lot of friends in high school. Didn't do a lot of I didn't really have any outside activities outside of going to school and coming home and going to church. Really, that was my outside activity, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. That's a good thing.
So in that regard, I always looked at it as, and again, I'm not a parent, so I have my opinion, but that's about all I got. I feel like at some point, you gotta trust the parenting that you've done up until whatever stage we are in our lives, whether I'm 16, 21, 31, you gotta trust that what you've taught me, whether you think I'm listening to you or not, I'm listening to you. And okay. I feel like a lot of times, the way you parented me, and particularly, it was almost like you didn't trust what you taught me.
Oh,
and it was almost like you thought that I wasn't listening. And be very clear, I was a hard-headed kid. I talked back. I had a very smart mouth. I rolled my eyes a lot.
Well, you did roll your eyes.
I acted like I wasn't listening to you, but I did listen.
Okay.
I just didn't want you to know I was listening, I guess.
Wow. That was, when she said that she was listening, obviously she didn't want me to think she was listening. She guesses. But here's the part, or here's what she said that really opened my eyes. And that was that in her mind, in her view of my parenting with her, it was as though I didn't trust what I taught her. So if I didn't trust, I'm thinking, well, if I didn't trust, or if it seemed like I didn't trust what I taught her, then why even teach it to her? The Bible says, and I'm sneaking a preach. No, this is not a sneak preach. This is intentional. And I see you, Brother Donald Locklear. God bless you. Thank you for joining in today. If you have any questions, again, throw them in the comments. But understand this, the scripture tells us to train up a child in the way that they should go. And when they are old, it does not mean they won't veer off. It doesn't mean that they won't fall by the wayside. It doesn't mean that they're not going to make mistakes or even fight, press up against what it is you've taught them or we've taught them, but they will not depart from it. It will always remain with them. They will always remember what we taught them. And as a parent, man, that just was eye-opening to me, that it was as though in my daughter's mind, Adrian's mind, I didn't trust what I taught her, as though I may have thought that what I was teaching her wasn't the right thing, or that I was teaching her the wrong thing or the wrong way. And we as parents, those of you who are watching, or those of you who will watch this at a later time, if you're teaching your child the right things, then, as the 76ers say, it didn't work for the Sixers, but you have to trust the process. Yeah, you have to trust the process. If you're giving them the truth, if you're telling them right, if you're showing them right, then you just have to trust the process and know that as they get older, yes, if you hammered it and you spoke it and you yelled it and you taught it, that they got it. They may not act like they have it, but they got it. And at some point, it's going to click and they're going to not just remember it, but they're going to rehearse it. It's going to be a part of their life, and they're going to live what you taught them out. And I was just happy to hear and relieved to hear as well, because it made me feel as though, yes, I did teach my children the right things. Yes, I may have acted as though, I don't maybe trust them or trust the process. And as they grow up, trying to protect them from making mistakes and doing things that would hurt them. But know that when we teach our children the right thing, that there's something inside of them that will grab hold of that and that won't let go of it. And what we taught them that's in their mental capacity will eventually show up in their actions, show up in how they live their lives. That wasn't the only thing she said yesterday. There's more. We had a great conversation yesterday. I'm going to give you some more. Check this out. We lived together in the same house for until you were 18. Was it 18 or 19 or 17? 20, huh? 25? Was it 25? Wow. Okay. Wow, you should have got out a long time ago.
Actually, no, I shouldn't have, because I distinctly remember you telling me when I was about 16 years old that me and Taylor never had to move out unless we were married. So
well, that was true. And I meant that. But yes, I mean, there was.
But as far as some of our bitter moments,
yeah,
while living together,
yeah,
for me, and
particularly as you got older,
it was, again, this is my feelings on it, your lack of understanding of who I was.
Okay.
I do not feel that when I was growing up, we had much in common, and we didn't have similar interests. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I feel like you sometimes put less effort into me mm-hmm. opposed to my siblings. Mm-hmm. Because of that, the older I got, it shaped my mind. It shaped me to think that you didn't like me. It shaped me to think that you didn't care for me as much as you cared for my siblings.
Right.
The more I thought that, the less I wanted to be around you.
Okay.
And because I wanted to be around you less and less, I had no reason to speak to you.
Mm-hmm.
I had nothing to tell you. I had nothing. We had no reason to speak unless
we were ordering pizza.
That, or unless it was church related. To be quite honest with you.
Right. Okay.
That's just how I felt. For me, it had everything to do with your my opinion was your lack of understanding of just like who I am. Like, no, I don't play sports. Mm-hmm. I don't do the things that my siblings do.
Right.
But this is what I'm into. I am into theater. I am into writing.
Mm-hmm.
But because you have no background in theater or the arts,
mm-hmm.
I felt like you paid me no mind.
Right. Right.
There were times where I felt like you should have been present for certain things that I was doing,
mm-hmm.
and you just weren't.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sometimes.
And did you think that I wasn't present because I didn't care about you, or because there was something else that was going on, or that I wasn't interested?
I feel like it was a combination of a lot of things. I think it was a combination of you not being interested, not because I feel like it was your lack of care for it, mm-hmm. and just not wanting to put effort into it because it was something that you were unfamiliar with.
Okay.
There were times where you would, again, in my opinion, put the church before me.
Mm-hmm.
I distinctly remember, like, I had a theater play that I was in,
mm-hmm.
and you distinctly told me that you had to go to something in the church.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion about that is the church can wait.
Mm-hmm.
I'm your child. As far as I was concerned, you showed up for the high school football games for the boys, and you went to Taylor's track meets. The least you could do was come to a play for me.
Right.
And you didn't. And for me, it hurt me because I was like, how is it that he can, still while pastoring, still while playing football, still doing all the things you were doing, you made time to not only show up for London's football games, but you coached him.
Mm-hmm.
You were there for Bubba's football games. You were there for the basketball games. You were there for Taylor. You were at Taylor's practices, let alone her track meets.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was like he can make time for all of them, but there's no time for me. All of a sudden, there's church events. All of a sudden, there's a speaking engagement he has to go to.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I took it as you didn't care.
Wow. It's amazing how, and it was eye-opening to me. The conversation went on, and I was explaining to Adrian, as a parent, we try to do the best we can do And, being a professional athlete or former professional athlete, pastor, whatever hats I had to wear. I mean, there were many times, and most of the time, I would say no to people about appearances or, going and doing things that if I didn't have a family, I would have been doing. But then there were times when I did say yes, and it sometimes would be the wrong time to say yes to appearances or speaking engagements, so on and so forth. But the point is that the perception of our children when it comes to us, particularly those of us who have more than one child, man, we have to be careful. Those of you that have more than one child, please be careful about making sure and be conscious about making sure that you give each one of your children the individual time that they need. Now, obviously, Adrienne was talking about a particular incident or a particular play, but still, it made a difference to her. It's something that she remembers to this day, and it had an impact on her then, and still somewhat of an impact on her now. Yes, I did take Adrienne out. We went out on dates and things like that. We did do other things, so please don't think I just totally ignored my child. But there was some individual, particular, special, focused in attention that she desired from her father, that in that particular instance or in that particular area, she did not receive it. And yes, I did do other things and did not do other things with and for my other three children. But we have to make sure that we're conscious of what it is we're doing, what it is we're not doing with each one of our children. We can't show favoritism, although they are all different, and we have to deal with them in their individual capacity and in their individual personalities, and in their individual giftedness and in their individual interests. We have to deal with them as parents, and it's important that we're aware of that. Now, those of you who know me, you know that I played in the NFL for 17 years. My children had to deal with that. And we talked for a minute about that, about being the daughter or being the child of an NFL player, and me being, and how that affected her, how that affected her siblings. So check this out. Football, family, fame, children. What was it like being the child of a NFL player?
A regular child, because we still got grounded and stuff like that. Like
well, in the house, it was regular, yeah.
But that's how it was outside the house. We still had to be respectful. We still, like, I think the stigma that people think is that, and I got this a lot growing up, is like, we just like literally lived and slept on piles of money. And I'm just like, no, that's actually not how my house is. Like, yes, we have nice things, and my parents worked very hard for us to have the lifestyle that my siblings and I have, but no, we did not sleep on piles of money. We did not get everything that we asked for. Well, to an extent.
Well, I can already say, wait a minute now.
We did not get everything.
Yeah, to an extent. Yeah.
Were we very fortunate to have many things? Yes, absolutely. But to me, it was always just, you're my dad, and football is your job.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this just last night, how I told you,
No, you didn't care about football.
Football to me was a non-factor. I don't want to go as far as saying that I hated it, because at the end of the day, it did provide us our house and food and clothes and things like that, because it was your job. Mm-hmm. But I could have cared less. To me, football was annoying.
Why was it annoying?
I didn't like going to your games. I'm not gonna lie to you. I didn't like going. I didn't want to sit outside. I didn't want to be cold. I didn't want to be hot. I didn't want to be in the crowd of people. I had anxiety as a kid. I got anxiety as an adult. I don't like big crowds of people. Fans don't know how to act sometimes. I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be dragged to another game. It was just a nuisance to me. Also, not for nothing, I didn't know what the heck was going on. I didn't even know where you were on the field half the time.
You didn't know a number?
I mean, I knew your number, but like, sometimes you weren't that close to the field for me to see your number. Sometimes I just really wasn't paying attention. I also just didn't care a lot of the time. Like I just did. Like I'm being completely. I just didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
For me, football was another thing that took you away from the house, and that's how I viewed it. It was another thing where, whether you were at training camp, practice, a
Mm-hmm.
game, an away game, be it a home game or away game, you were always busy. Football was an all-consuming thing,
Mm-hmm.
not just for you, but for our family.
Right.
So for me, I was like, I could care less about this. The greatest day was when you told us you were retiring. The worst thing was when you said you were gonna be a pastor. It was just like another. It was a twofold thing. It was like football to me was never. I went so far as to say I adamantly, up until a few years ago, I adamantly did not date men or boys, for that matter, who played football.
Wow.
Like I was very intentional about that. It wasn't until a few years ago that I started dating someone that played football. But before that, I was very adamant about that. Like if someone
You didn't want somebody like your daddy?
Not even close.
You
No.
You don't like your daddy?
Not anybody in the high school that like aspired to play in the NFL. I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to talk to you. Even as I got older and became like a young, like in my 20s, anybody that was like, I want to go to NFL, no, I don't want to talk to you.
Is your daddy that bad of an example?
It's not that you're that bad of an example. I just know that the lifestyle I grew up in, and for me, I don't want that.
Some of you may be scratching your head. What do you mean you don't want that? It's the perception, which is the reality of that person. Adrian grew up in a house where she was comfortable. We made sure she was comfortable. Her and her siblings, they were all comfortable. There was a certain amount of, obviously, light that shined on our house, or I should say we maybe lived in a glass house because I had a job that put me out in the public, and therefore it brought exposure, I should say, to the family, to my family. And that's something, you hear a lot of professional athletes or people who are in the limelight sometimes say, man, I wish I could just be normal. That's what Adrian was saying. I wish we could just be normal. But there's nothing normal about that life when you talk about people and their interest in what we do and how we live because we have the position we have in sports. So it was an interesting take on that for me, because when you talk to people who don't come from that kind of background or who have not been exposed to professional sports at that level, you hear young people say, or you even hear adults say, man, I wish I could do that. I wish I could have that. I wish I could experience that. I wish I could have that lifestyle. I wish I could be there and be at that level. But then there are plenty, and Adrian's not the only one. I've heard other professional athletes that I've played with, their children or their spouse or maybe their friends say, man, I wish things were different, that there wasn't, because it can be stressful sometimes. It can be annoying, as Adrian would say. It can be annoying sometimes, sitting in a restaurant with your family, trying to eat, and instead of, I never shunned anybody away from an autograph, but at least be conscious of the fact that I'm sitting with my family eating. And when I got a fork full of food about ready to shovel it in my mouth, and you come up behind me and tap me on my shoulder, can you sign an autograph for me? Well, come on, use a little bit of common sense and at least wait till I get the food in my mouth, or at least wait till I finish eating to ask me. But some people just aren't aware of that. Does it make them right or wrong? No, it's just that part of it, the part of the position that we hold that comes with it, that can be annoying. So I wasn't surprised that, being the daughter or the child of a professional athlete, I wasn't surprised that Adrian was not going to have something necessarily positive to say about it, in that, it can be burdensome, particularly over time. Now, there's the last part that I want to show us that we talked about. And I want you to know that we didn't get through all of the conversation yesterday. There's some things that we have yet to talk about, that we want to talk about, and we want you to hear us talk about it. So this is probably going to be part one of several daddy-daughter shows. But one thing we made sure we covered, or at least talked about a little bit, was divorce. That's something that is real. It's something that takes place in more than half the marriages in the United States, and that does not exempt Christians, believers. I think it's even higher than 50% with Christians. We talked about that and the impact that it's had on our family. And I want to show that, and that will be our last segment for today, at least in this show for Daddy Daughter. But I want you to hear what Adrian had to say. We've been through a lot in the last, 6 years? Yeah, 6 years.
6, 7.
Yeah, I think it's been 6. Let me see. I went to prison October 2nd, 2015.
I was saying 19.
19, yeah, 2015. Seems like 19. 2015. So it's been since, well, actually before then, like 2 years before then. So yeah, it's been 6 or 7 years that this turmoil has taken place. And in the midst of that, your mother and I divorced. And that has had a significant impact on you. I can't speak for everybody else, but it has had an impact, significant impact on all of us, everyone involved, whether it was directly or indirectly involved. And most of the time, up until recently, I think, maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, most of it's not been good. Most of it has been traumatic. Most of it has been painful. Just so everyone knows, divorce, nobody wins in divorce. Nobody. You, whoever it is you're divorcing or being divorced from, your family, your children, nobody. The only people that win in divorce are the attorneys, because they make all the money. Those are the only people that are benefiting from a divorce. So really, if that's something that you're thinking about, if it's something that is possibly on your agenda, I plead with you, I beg you to really pray about that and really, get a second opinion, even a third opinion, and rethink making that decision, because you don't win. You don't win. And our family has been traumatized. It has taken a lot for us. It's taken a lot for Adrian and I to come together and to speak here on this podcast at the Friar Place. It took a lot for us to come to the point where we're back in fellowship and we can communicate honestly. We still have, listen, it's been 7 years with all of this mess. We still have moments. We still have moments where it gets tense, and prayerfully that won't happen here in the next few minutes.
I make no promises.
But if it does, it does. It is what it is. And it's because of the divide, because of the severing of the relationship and everybody that is connected to the marriage. When there's a divorce, everybody is impacted, and it's not positive. People think, well, I'm just going to get away from this person. My life will get better. Maybe, listen, if you're being physically abused, you're being beaten, or somebody just left and abandoned you, okay, I understand that. But other than that, it just, I really don't see the benefit of it. And I'm divorced. And it just, and I've moved on. But that doesn't take away the pain. It doesn't take away the pain for my daughter here, Adrian, or my other daughter, Taylor, or my two sons, London and Irving Jr., or our grandchildren, or our family members. It just doesn't. And one of the things, Adrian, you can chime in on this.
Hmm.
One of the things that I felt when the divorce took place, I felt as though, and this is just my perception,
Mm-hmm.
I felt as though people felt like they had to take a side. I felt like people.
They did take a side.
Well, again, they did take a side. That's what I'm saying. It felt like people felt like they had to take a side.
So here's the thing about that, though. The reason I feel like people did and felt as though they needed to take a side was because of the position that you guys held. It was not like you guys are just random people that got divorced.
Mm-hmm.
You guys were pastors of a church together.
Right.
You guys are, almost like second parents to many people.
Right.
Because of that, yes, people took sides.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say about that is, be it right or wrong.
But why does that? Because
why does it happen?
No. I'm the position we held. I still hold. Why would that make someone feel like they had to take a side?
Because one was leaving, one was staying.
Okay.
Let's just call it like a spade a spade.
Okay.
She left the church.
Mm-hmm.
You stayed there.
Right.
There's a divide.
Right.
People felt whatever they felt. They did what they chose to do.
Mm-hmm.
My stance on that has always been and will always be, the only people that had a right to, whether it's choose a side, have a feeling, an opinion, voice an opinion, for that matter, would be me, my siblings,
Mm-hmm.
you, and my mother.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of us, I just don't feel like y'all's divorce mattered. It should have not mattered to y'all as much as it did. In the sense of...
You're saying to other people.
To other people, yes. Yeah. In the sense of, like, yes, you can have an opinion, but keep it to your damn self.
Mm-hmm. Well, people don't do that.
And I learned that.
And I'm a stickler with, people have always talked about me. You know that all my life.
That's fine.
Good and bad. They've always talked about me. But what they won't do is they won't come talk in my face.
And that's the problem that I have, though.
Yeah. They won't tell me in my face.
Have voiced things. They've posted things. They've said things to my face. They said things behind my back. None of it is accurate. I told you this, and I've told my mother this. I will never know why you guys got divorced.
Mm-hmm.
Your marriage is your marriage. What happened between y'all is between y'all. I don't even want to know.
Mm-hmm.
However, again, it turned my world upside down.
Mm-hmm.
It turned my siblings' worlds upside down.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the only ones that were affected by it, or should have been affected by it. I personally feel like when you guys separated and got your divorce, anybody outside of your children
mm-hmm.
chose to be affected by it. You chose to insert yourself in our business.
That makes sense.
You chose to make it about your feelings. When in reality, to me personally, y'all's feelings don't matter. Not when it comes to this. Not when it comes to what's going on in our household, no.
That makes sense. But that's, again, as we were talking about earlier, that's the nature of people. They want to be in other people's business to deflect their own issues, their own lack in certain areas. So they'll put other people's business in the forefront and make them the news. So it keeps the news or keeps the talk off of them. It keeps them from being the focal point. And I agree, but that just doesn't. That's never been the case. That just doesn't happen. Yeah, it's never been the case.
However, I will say I learned that because it didn't happen, it put a strain on a lot of relationships that I have with people.
Mm-hmm.
And that strain is still there to this day.
Right.
Whereas I feel like, again, had you just minded your business, we wouldn't be here.
So how did the divorce
affect me?
Yes, that's where I'm going.
Like I said, my world was turned upside down. Again, I was 25, but at that time, I still lived at home with you guys. I was
not planning on going anywhere.
I mean, not really, but here we are. It was, looking back, I mean, it was a blessing and a curse in a sense. It was, yes, it turned my world upside down. I watched you guys, I watched you through the whole process
mm-hmm.
of it, the good and the bad. And through that, I learned, different sides of you. I saw some things I didn't like. I saw some things I was like, okay, y'all, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was shocking. Some days it was scary. Mostly sad,
mm-hmm.
because
that's a great way to describe it. Sad.
Again, no child wants their parents to separate, no
mm-hmm.
matter how old you are. You don't want that. Well, you hope that doesn't happen. You always hope that if your parents are arguing, they figure it out. They
Right.
work it out.
Right.
So even as an adult, it was just one of those things where it was like, okay, this is happening. Like, this is really happening.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, yeah, it was sad. It was sad to see you guys go your separate ways. It was sad to see both of you sad. It was sad to see ultimately you guys hurting and not always dealing with it the proper way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, because I was living in the house still, when everything happened, yes, my world got turned upside down because I was directly affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucked.
But
and I was angry.
If do you think if it had not happened, that you would be the independent, strong person that you are now?
Well, that's the blessing part of it. I think that had it not happened, number one, I quickly had to grow up.
Right.
There were things that because of y'all's separation, I had to quickly learn how to do. I was put into a different role in our house at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't, had you guys stayed together, no, I don't think that I would be who I am right now. But I also think that, I could have got here a different, less traumatic way. But no, I don't think that I would be where I'm at. I think that because of your separation and because of the things that followed the separation.
Uh-oh. That's your phone.
Yeah, it was. Because of the separation, I had to learn how to do certain things. I became more independent, more self-sufficient. Whereas, yes, before I definitely depended on you and mom for everything.
Talk to, and we're going to finish this out, but I want you to talk to Adrian and all those Adrians that are out there watching whose parents got divorced, who loves their parents, and that divorce or the separation really has had the negative impact that it does on that child, whether it's a guy or girl. Adrian's a boy's name too. It could have been a boy's name.
Well, I could have been a boy's name had I been a boy. I'd have been so Adrian.
Well, you still, and so would Taylor, because I named you both like that. You'd been Adrian if you're a boy, and she'd have been Taylor if she was a boy. But talk to that young person who's dealing with what you had to deal with. And I want to say too, yeah, divorce, I already said it earlier, divorce you can't prepare for it. You actually went to the door, someone knocked at the door, gave you an envelope, and you actually brought me the envelope that had the divorce papers in it. You didn't know it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I remember the envelope.
I
didn't know that's what I was handing you.
And I didn't know that's what you were handing me either until I opened it, and that's what it was. And when I opened it, and this probably shocked you too, or disturbed you at least at the minimum, when I received that letter, I was very hurt. I was very surprised because it kind of came out of nowhere. I look back now and I kind of, there were signs, obviously that was coming with regards to the notification. But I left then. I took the letter, gathered some stuff, and left, and didn't come back. Remember that?
Perception, reality.
Okay. Go ahead.
That's not what I remember.
Okay. What do you remember? I mean, the next few days, I didn't leave right then.
But how honest and candid can I be before I say what I'm going to say?
Say what you want to say. No, I want you to say what you want to say. Like you said, this is your reality. This is how you saw it.
What I remember is you were out of town. You came back home. I was working somewhere at the time, and you picked me up from work. And I knew something was wrong because you picked me up from work in your mother's car. And we're sitting in the parking lot of my job, and you looked at me, and you told me that you asked for the divorce.
Right. I didn't tell you then when I got the letter.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
So you asked me that you told me that you had asked for the divorce.
Oh, no.
Listen to what I'm telling
you. Go ahead.
I looked at you. I said, okay. I put my headphones on. We went home. Fast forward however many days it was. I do remember someone knocking on the door. Couldn't tell you who the person was. Them handing me an envelope. I remember handing it to you because that's what we did in the house. If something came, we just gave it to you or mom.
Right.
Because we knew it was coming for us. So I gave it to you, and I remember going on about my business. I didn't think anything twice about it.
Right.
Because again, I didn't know what I was handing you.
Right.
Someone handed me an envelope, said it was for my father, gave it to you.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you leaving. And I remember being angry. Because I just didn't, to me, I couldn't comprehend fully what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't comprehend that in my mind, you weren't separating from my mother. You were leaving me.
Right.
That's how I took it.
Right.
I took it as my dad's leaving me.
Right.
I'm still here and he's not here and he's leaving me. I didn't take it as, oh, my parents are getting divorced.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't take it as, oh, he's angry, he has to go drive off for a few minutes, cool off. No, that's not how I took it. I took it as like he's leaving.
Right.
And then days that followed that were just a blur for me. For many of those days, like weeks for that point actually, were a blur. Going through the motions of life, getting up, doing whatever I needed to do, and going to sleep, doing the same thing again. Like my life became a very big blur for a very long time. I don't really think I vaguely remember anything, from being honest with you, until you were going to jail.
Okay.
That's kind of when I snapped back into like, oh snap, something else. Because at that point it was like, okay, now something else is happening.
Right. Yeah. Another wind blew, right. So that kind of just woke you up. Yeah.
If I had to talk to the Adrians out there, know that it's not your fault. Know that your parents' marriage is your parents' marriage. It doesn't change how they feel about you. Know that they hopefully have done everything they possibly could do. Whether it was therapy, whether it was counseling, whatever the case may be, know that they've exhausted all their options, hopefully. But know that through it all, you're going to be okay. That if you take the time to just sit back for a minute and truly breathe, you'll see that you're going to come out stronger. Whether your parents do or not, you're going to come out stronger. You're going to be okay. It feels like the end of the world. Absolutely. Own that. Sit in that. Feel everything that you feel. You're entitled to feel everything that you feel, whether it be angry, whether it be sad. There were days I literally cussed at both my parents. Be it right or wrong, that's how I expressed how I felt. I was entitled to everything I felt, whether they agreed with it or not, whether it was the right way to express it or not. But it's going to be okay. I can sit here and say 7 years later, I would not be the woman that I am right now if I didn't go through what my parents essentially put me through, be it unintentional or not. They went through something that affected me. Your parents are going through something that's going to affect you. But you're going to be okay. Life is not over. It doesn't stop here. There's a story after this. You're okay. It sucks, but you're okay.
I want to put something up that David Hunt put up. Can you see that? Yeah. Let me move it over a little bit so you can. He said, "This is an awesome conversation." Yes, it is, Brother Hunt. Thank you for observing and being on with us today on YouTube. Man, I thought that was just necessary to delve into that part of our lives and that part of our relationship, the divorce side, because she thought I was divorcing her. She thought I was walking away from her. She thought I was leaving her, my daughter, though. The relationship never changes. She's always my daughter. I'm always her father. But the fellowship did change. And it had more negative up to this point than it did positive. So anybody who's been watching or who's going to watch this, that was just a sliver, really, of the depth of divorce and how that has an impact, particularly on the kids. We as adults, we kind of could really care less when we're in a divorce about the other adult. But man, the ones that really get beat up, the ones that really get tossed around, the ones who really get impacted and really struggle with divorce are the kids, not the relatives, not the cousins and the siblings that we have, but it's our kids. And we have to make sure, if that is going to be a reality in our lives, that we make sure we minister to our children. The adventures. Let me put this up from Absolutely. The adventures. She says absolutely. It won't click up. Come on. Okay, there it is. Yeah. The adventures of heart and soul. Yes, absolutely. Yep, that was an absolute eye-opener for all of us. Again, thanks for joining us today. You know, that's going to do it for our show. I think that's about all I can take. I want to thank my daughter. I mean, I watched that 3 or 4 times before I put it on, and it's just eye-opening. It's eye-opening. We just really need to be mindful of what it is we're doing as parents and how that impacts our children, because we're going to be dead and gone, and what we've left behind, they're going to live out. It's going to come out of them, what we put in them, what we placed in them, how we've lived our lives, and what that has done to impact their lives. They're going to continue to live that out. And if we haven't placed positive in our children, then positive's not going to come out. If we haven't placed God in our children's lives, then the godly things, godly character is not going to be the example. We need to make sure, even when we go through tough times, even when things like divorce take place, we still need, and we know that God works all things together for our good, because Adrian said it. She wouldn't be who she is now with regards to her individuality as a woman. You know, Richard said, thanks for not crying on air. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm gonna hold it together, but it all has a way of working itself out for good. Again, as Adrian said, she wouldn't be the person. She doesn't believe she'd be the person, the strong person, the individual person, the one who's taking care of herself, living on her own, doing for herself. She wouldn't be that person now if she wasn't pushed into that on purpose. You know, the situation purposefully pushed her into having to get out on her own, do for herself. She's gotten her own car. She got her own apartment. She got a job. I'm very, very proud of her. God bless the child that has her own. And that happened as a result, again, of the divorce. Now, was she already a strong person? Yeah. Did she already have enough intelligence to be able to get out on her own and find her own job and to get her own car? Yeah, she had all of that inside of her, but it never manifested itself until she had to do it. So we find good in it, but that still doesn't take away the pain. We're going to continue these daddy daughters. We just scratched the surface, but that's going to do it for the show today. I want to thank my daughter Adrian for being just frank and being upfront and participating in our daddy daughter show. And know, again, like I said, we're going to do, this is just the first one. We're going to do at least a couple more. All right. Shout out to Alicia Way for the dope overlays. Shout out to Lou Rogers, Vision, Audio, Visual, our videographer. Shout out to Green Legion, for promoting the Fireplace. This podcast was brought to you by Ecamm, virtual software made for Mac that carries your message across the world. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. Listen, next week's guest is Mr. Mario Henry. Mario is an expert in financial freedom. Mario is the president of the U.S. Housing Exchange and a partner with MWR Financial. MWR stands for Making Wealth Reality. Yes, if your financial IQ isn't what it needs to be, you need to make sure you tune into next week's show. My name is Irving Fryer. Thanks for joining me at the Fireplace, where the conversations are fire. Yeah, we'll see you next week. Take care.